Top 10 Violin Myths Debunked. If we haven't met, hi, I'm Megan. I'm a violinist and Suzuki trained teacher. I've been playing the violin basically all my life, well, since I was 7, and I started teaching in 2014, so over 10 years now, and I've been teaching full-time since 2019. If this is the first video you're seeing of mine, definitely go check out my channel. I have hundreds of helpful tips and tutorials, and if you enjoy them, please subscribe. I also have a super affordable, comprehensive learning program called Learn Violin Online. This program has 6 learning phases, all the way from beginner to advanced, an active community, the option for unlimited direct feedback from me, monthly challenges, and a lot more. It's only $35 a month, so it's super affordable. You can check that out in the description. And if you're looking for private lessons, I teach here in New Jersey and online, and you can check the description for an application to work with me. Now that we're acquainted, let's get into the myths. Myth number 1, the quality of my violin doesn't really matter. I'm a huge believer that you do not need a $100,000+ instrument to sound good. In fact, the instrument that I play on now that has served me well through my musical career was less than $3,000. Obviously, I bought it a long time ago, but still, it's not a super expensive instrument, and look where I am today. With that being said, it is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to learn on a VSO or a violin-shaped object that is just not suited for players. If the violin is uncomfortable to play, maybe the fingerboard is too low so the strings are really high and hard to press down. Maybe the pegs are really hard to turn and it'll never stay in tune. Maybe you can't even turn the fine tuners because they are so stuck. These are all things that, yes, do happen with very poor quality violins and make your violin learning journey extremely difficult. If you are a beginner, you want the odds stacked in your favor. So if you have an instrument that is just uncomfortable or that you're always struggling with and you feel like it's always fighting against you, what are the odds that you're gonna actually continue playing? Probably pretty slim. Again, I'm not saying you have to go out and spend $5,000+ on an instrument. There are great quality instruments for a couple $100s. Just not the ones you get from Amazon. I'll leave a link to my favorite affordable option in the description. But the truth is, violin quality matters. Myth number 2, the more expensive the instrument, the better the quality. Violin price is not something that is regulated. It's not something like gas, for example, where in general, all of the gas stations have to offer a pretty similar price depending on the area, or else no one will come to them. Violin makers and violin sellers can set the price of a violin however much they choose, and there's really no one to tell them they're wrong. As I mentioned, the violin that I have now is less than $3,000 back in the day, and I got that when I was, I think, in like 6th or 7th grade. When I was a senior and contemplating going to music schools, I tried out other violins, so I was thinking about getting a new one. I tried out a bunch in the $5,000-$10,000 range, and I just did not like them as much as my current violin, so I stuck with that one. Violin taste is highly personal, and you might find yourself loving a $1,000 violin and hating a $10,000 violin. But as long as your violin is a good quality instrument, it does not matter how much it costs. Myth number 3 is that you have to start playing the violin at a very young age. It's true that children learn quicker than adults in general. Their brains are like little sponges, and it might be more easy for them to pick up skills like playing an instrument. However, it does not mean that adults cannot learn how to play the violin. As a teacher, I teach plenty of children, yes, but I also teach adults well into their 60s. There's so many benefits of learning an instrument, including increased cognitive function, memory, coordination, discipline. There's no age limit to starting to play the violin. If you want to become a professional musician, the later you start, the harder it is. That's true. However, it's not impossible. One of my mentors from when I was younger, his name is Kenneth Goldsmith. He's passed away now, but he was a teacher at Rice University, and he didn't start playing until he was 14, which is very late in the violin world. He was a concertmaster by age 19, and he was the professor at Rice freaking university, which is an amazing school. So there's really no limit to what you can do. You can start learning to play the violin at any age. Myth number 4 is that you have to be born with talent. As I mentioned, I'm a Suzuki teacher, and in our Suzuki training, we are required to read Dr. Suzuki's book, Nurtured by Love. In this book, Dr. Suzuki argues that talent is not a thing. And I agree with him. The difference between people with talent and with no talent is their environment. If you started listening to concertos in the womb and were always around music and always absorbing it and started playing at 3 years old and practiced really hard, then yeah, you're gonna sound better than somebody who has no prior musical experience, was never exposed to classical music, and is starting at age 20. There's no genetic predisposition to playing the violin or anything else. Talent is not born, it's created through the right environment and of course practice. Myth number 5 is that you have to have perfect pitch to play the violin. So perfect pitch is being able to hear a note and just know what that note name is in your head. And you absolutely do not have to have this to play the violin. I don't have perfect pitch, so it is not necessary. However, what is necessary is relative pitch. So that is the ability to tell when That's the ability to tell when notes are in tune relative to one another. So that is why intervals are so important, because hearing your intervals is going to be how you know how your notes are in tune when you're playing pieces. Myth number 6, and this might be a little controversial, but the myth is that you have to stand while practicing. I understand why this is a very common belief, because when you're standing, it is a lot harder to have bad posture. If you're standing, you're more likely to have your shoulders back, your violin up, not be leaning your elbow against your side, and just overall have a better violin stance. However, it's certainly not impossible to play with a good violin stance when you're sitting down. Sometimes we're tired, sometimes our back is hurting, right? And you do not just have to practice standing up. Practicing sitting down is just as effective. Honestly, I sit down most of the time when I practice, and I really only stand up and play if I'm actively preparing for something where I'll have to be standing while I play. Myth number 7 is that left-handed players need a left-handed violin. No. If you are left-handed, you do not need a left-handed violin. In fact, some argue that you might even have an advantage because your left hand is already more dexterous. There's really no advantage to playing left-handed. If you were ever to play with others or play in an orchestra or some sort of ensemble, you would be crashing into your stand partner. If you wanted to learn how to play the violin from a teacher or just from other resources, there's very little resources out there for left-handed players compared to the normal right-hand position. And sure, it might be a little bit hard to hold the bow at first, but it's hard for everyone, not just lefties. So if you're a left-handed person, you do not need to play left-handed. I promise you, I know so many lefties that play beautifully the normal way. Myth number 8 is that only classical music can be played on the violin. Obviously, that's just not true. The violin is so versatile and can be used to play so many different types of music. It can be used to play, of course, like fiddle and folk music, but also even like rock and pop. Electric violins with 5, 6, 7 strings also bridge the gap a little bit and make it easier to incorporate the violin into more popular music. Just take a look at Lindsey Stirling. She plays all kinds of crazy stuff, EDM, she dances while she plays. Obviously, you can play more than classical with the violin. Number 9, and this one might be controversial again. Fingerboard stickers are crutches. So, I used to be a very firm believer in finger tapes. I used to think that they were the only way to learn, and that if you didn't use finger tapes, you were just spinning your wheels. I don't believe that anymore. I don't think every single person needs to use finger tapes, but I don't agree with the people that bash others for using finger tapes. I use tapes and that turned out fine. The argument is, oh, you should just listen. You should just be able to hear when your notes are in tune. Okay, we can't do that at the beginning, and that's totally fine. That's why we listen and we train our ear, and in the meantime, we have markers to show us where our fingers go so we can get used to how they sound when in their correct spot. My personal opinion is that finger tapes actually help you build up your muscle memory more quickly, aka you're going to know where your fingers go more quickly than those who aren't using tapes because you are more consistently placing your fingers in the right spot. But I'm not bashing you if you don't want to use tapes. I'm just saying that fingerboard tapes are not crutches. They are a normal learning tool. And I bet you, your favorite violinists probably used tapes when they were kids. And myth number 10. My violin is a Stradivarius. So I see people saying this when they maybe have inherited a violin, or they've gotten a violin as a gift, or maybe they found one like in a thrift store or on Marketplace, and on the inside it says Stradivarius. No. There are so many reasons why you could say Stradivarius. One, it could be a model of a Stradivarius. Just like my violin is a model of a Guadagnini. There are violins that are models of Stradivarius, and it could say that inside. Two, the more than likely scenario is just someone's trying to pass it off as a Strad, because they want to sell it for more money. But in reality, Stradivarius violins, there's only a couple, really, not a couple, but only a few hundred that exist, and they are all accounted for. The chances of finding a random Stradivarius violin, or like one in like several million, it's just probably not gonna happen. So whatever violin you come across is more than likely not a Strad. So those are your top 10 violin myths debunked. What did I miss? What's another popular violin myth? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and please make sure to subscribe before you go.